Hey there, gang. I want to share something with you today that I think will be very useful. I want to help you avoid some mistakes in your career if you're an aspiring artist, singer-songwriter in the music business. So when I started out, I didn't know this when I released my first album because my first album was kind of an accident. I had recorded some demos and it ended up getting released. But when I got signed to a real record deal, the making of the album, that's the easy part. I say this all the time. That's the jelly. That's nothing. The promotional part and setting up a release, that's the tough part. So I want you to avoid making certain mistakes. The first one is, just because you've made a great record and you've spent money and done it right and hired great musicians and the studio, all that, that's just the beginning. The most important part of your release is the promotional schedule. How are you setting up that release? And what I mean by that is, so have you hired a publicist? You need to hire a publicist. The first thing that happened to me when I signed to a record deal, they were like, okay, pick one of these publicists. And I was like, pick one of the, I don't know anything about publicists. So they gave me a list and I went through that publicist's CV, their resume, and saw who they represented. I got to, in some cases, read their press releases for those artists. And I was like, okay, so I could judge based on their press release and the artist, if I knew them, who would be appropriate for me. So I got to pick a publicist. Sometimes when you sign to a record deal, you don't get to pick a publicist. So I don't think that's always normal, but you should have a say in it. So they gave me a publicist. That publicist then sat down with me and asked me a bunch of questions, got to know me so they could write a bio. So your bio is the most important first step. Who you are, where you're going, what you do, why you're different from everybody else. They're gonna really dig into you and try to capture your personality. Sometimes they'll hire a professional writer, usually a journalist who they've worked with in the past, and that person will sit down with you and write a bio. I've done that many times. So that's the first step. That's the most important. This is if you sign to a record deal or you do it on your own. You need to get somebody to create a professional bio, something that really captures you, but also captures the attention of journalists and the public and anybody, radio people, so they instantly know who you are and why you're not like everybody else. Very, very important. But in contrast to how it was with me when I signed to a record deal, there are very few record deals being thrown around these days. And even though there are some indies and smaller labels, are they really paying a good publicist to do their work? Are they doing it themselves? You might have to do it yourself. So here's the thing you should know first. Any decent publicist is going to cost you minimum, decent publicist who has a track record, $1,500 a month. And most of the time, they will require at least a 3-month commitment. So that means you're definitely paying that person $4,500 no matter what for working on your behalf. That's what my first record label paid. Now, I've paid up to $10,000 a month. Yeah, $10,000 a month for tippy top, like, massive, well-known, legendary publicists. Those are usually firms, from my experience. Those are big firms that carry a lot of weight. However, my experience has been from the $1,500 to the $10,000 a month, there's not a ton of difference. I think if you find the right publicist who gets you and you bond with them, a $1,500 a month publicist can be just as good as the $10,000. Personally, I thought we were wasting money on the $10,000 a month, but I wasn't paying for it. And you could say, oh, but you were paying for it in the end. Yeah, well, that was a big project that I was just the producer of. I wasn't the artist. So no, it wasn't coming out of my pocket. I thought it was foolish. And I thought it was an unnecessary expense, but that name does carry weight. That name, I guess you're paying for is they can just make a call and get you in places that supposedly the $1,500 publicist can't. However, most of the time, a $1,500 or a $2,500 a month publicist, and that's generally where it ranges for independent singer, songwriter, artists, are fine. But you need a bio, and you need to have a one sheet, a really tight, great story. Remember, you're telling stories with your songs. Well, every document that you release on your behalf to the press, to the public, a bio, a one sheet, has to tell a story. It's very, very important to tell a story. And many of these independent or smaller labels don't have the money that the big labels did to just willy-nilly hire people to do stuff. So if you're releasing something independently, before you release the album, say the album's done, you're good, you're happy with it, everybody says it's great, fine. You need to hire a publicist. You need to have a one sheet. You need to have a bio. And they need to be bulletproof, and they need to tell a story, at least a story as vivid and gripping as your music, so that people instantly know who you are. Now, there are still a few major labels left. They'll have their own in-house publicity people. They'll already be paid for. They'll be on salary. They'll work with you. But I really wouldn't rely on that because, like I said, there's not too many major labels signing independent artists unless you have a track record of your own already. So before you release your own record, make sure that your image, make sure your story is absolutely bulletproof and captures your character and personality 110%, so that, like, if I found it laying in the street and picked this up and go, oh, what's this? Oh, I want to get to know that artist. That's what you need. And then you need somebody representing you to the press. You can do it yourself. You could hire someone to write a bio. You could hire someone to write a one sheet. You could get a photographer to make amazing publicity pictures for you. Yes, you could do that, and that wouldn't be too expensive. But are you going to make all the calls? Are you going to touch base with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of publicists, of journalists worldwide and radio people who don't know you, and you're going to get in the door? Remember, 250,000 singles a week are being released right now, minimum, and you have to cut through the fluff. So if you have somebody who knows all those people and has done it for years and has a track record and a reputation, it's worth paying them. It's worth paying them to represent you. Yes, it's expensive, but this is why I'm telling you now, because making a record is only part of your budget for your record release as an artist. The rest is getting it out there, and you need to calculate how many more thousands of dollars if you're doing this yourself, and you probably will be, because again, the smaller labels don't have this kind of money really either. They're just throwing stuff out there. I don't know. I guess they're hoping that their network will respond to it and they'll sell enough records to break even or maybe make a little profit. I know a few labels that are throwing stuff out there because they sign a young artist because they know they're tremendous and someday they'll be bigger, and then those records will start selling. Like, you know, if you sign Nirvana and then 5 years later they're signed to a major and explode, then you're selling all of those records when you signed them when they were nobody. That's actually what people are thinking. But if you're going to do it yourself, calculate how much extra you should put in for promotion and publicity. My guess is it's an extra 10 grand minimum, but that would be a comfortable bubble to live in, because if you pay $4,500 for a publicist, a couple of grand for writers and whatever, and then mailing and then follow up, you're probably not even spending 10 grand, but it would be smart to calculate all of that in advance. Because if you just put a record out there right now, it's going to get lost and it's going to disappear and you're going to be frustrated. And you don't want to be frustrated. You want to have a long career. So put some thought into this. Calculate this into your budget, talk to your peoples, and try to not make the same mistake that so many people have. Most of the frustration I hear in the record business is, oh, I put it out there and nothing happened. You got to make sure that doesn't happen, okay? All right, sorry for the length, but I thought this would be helpful for some of you starting out because I don't want you to hit that brick wall, okay? Cool.